Well, in this video, I'm going to talk about how to splice wall plates. So the best way to demonstrate this is to frame a large wall. So I'm going to frame this wall on the left side of our house. We've done this small wall in the front, and now we're going to do the wall on the left side. We're going to start with a stud. So we highlight our stud, right click, copy, then right click out here and paste it. And then we're going to go up on top of the stud because we want to turn it 90 degrees. So we get to where we're on top of the stud. We can reach one of those red plus signs or red crosses there. Turn the stud 90 degrees. And then we can move the stud into place on the wall. Now I'm going to start my layout on the left side of the wall over here in front. And the reason I'm going to do it in front is because when I laid out my plates, I laid out a 16-foot plate here on the bottom and then a smaller one over here. I cut the back one. So if my studs start out at the end of the wall and go 16 inches on center, they should end up right over the seam of this splice on the wall plate, because that's where your splices need to be, right beneath a stud on standard spacing. Let's see if that works out for us. So I have this stud here, and now I'm going to put a stud 16 inches on center from the outside of the wall. Best way to do that, I've found, is to put a guideline in and put it in at 16 inches. And then I'm going to copy this stud. So I'm going to move it, little plus sign, and I'm going to move the stud over along the green axis. And then I will select the midpoint of the stud and set it right at the intersection of that line. So now I have a stud at the beginning of the wall, because you always have one at the beginning and one at the end. And then I have a stud 16 inches in. At this point, I can go 16 inches on center. So I hit my control button. So I have the little plus sign at the bottom of my pointer here. And I can bring a stud over along the green axis. And I can say 1/6 enter. And then I can say times, I don't know how many, 16. We'll just put 16 studs in there and see if that's enough. And it's not enough. Okay. So I put 16 and it wasn't enough. Looked like it needed to be more like 20. But what I can do is I can just make sure that plus sign again. I can move this last one. So I'm going to select it and move it with the plus sign. And I'm going to move it in the green axis, 16 inches on center. And I'm going to say times 4, just make sure I have enough. And I do, so brought it right out to the end. So it looks like 20 might have been the right number. Now this last one, I want to put it, I'm going to move it so that the outside edge is on the outside corner, just like that. It's okay if you have a spacing that's less than 16 inches on center, and you almost always will at the end of a wall. But you just want to make sure that from wherever you start, moving forward, it's always 16 inches on center. That way your plywood will lay out correctly. Now, let's look at that splice. There's the splice, and it's right at the center line of the stud. That's what we want to have. So now what I want to do is put my top plates on, right? I don't want to put the same size top plate up here on top, because then the splices will be over the same stud. That makes a weak point, a hinge point in that wall. So what I want to do is highlight the 16-footer, copy it, and then come out here and right click and paste it. And I'm going to paste it so that it is on top of the wall. Okay, and then I'm going to grab hold of it here on the end and set it right at the edge, right here. Okay, so there, that works out just fine. Now let's take a look at the top where it ends up. Notice how it ends up just a little bit off center. We need to fix that so that it's right at the center. We double click, push pull, and we push that thing back to where it's at the midpoint. Okay, so now if we look, we see that we have the bottom splice over here, and then 3 studs over we have the top splice. It's much stronger that way than if we have both splices right over the same stud. Now I can right click and paste again. And I'm going to put another plate up here. And I'm going to put it right, whoops, zoomed in a little too far. I'm going to put that edge right here where it needs to be. And then I'll have to cut it off a little bit at the end, which is just fine. Double click, push, pull, push that thing back to the edge of the wall. And now I have my other wall in, and I have my splices located in the correct position. I have them centered on studs on standard layout, and they're staggered.